Coming up on American Black Journal, we're going to talk about family caregivers and the resources available to help reduce the stress and challenges of taking care of our loved ones. Plus, we're going to tell you about a workshop that teaches families how to make college affordable. And we'll end with a performance by two well-known local artists. Stay right where you are. American Black Journal starts right now.
From Delta faucets to Behr paint, Masco Corporation is proud to deliver products that enhance the way consumers all over the world experience and enjoy their living spaces. Masco, serving Michigan communities since 1929. Support also provided by the Cynthia and Edsel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV.
The DTE Foundation proudly supports 50 years of American Black Journal in covering African American history, culture, and politics. The DTE Foundation and American Black Journal partners in presenting African American perspectives about our communities and in our world.
Also brought to you by Nissan Foundation and viewers like you. Thank you.
Hey, welcome to American Black Journal. I'm your host, Stephen Henderson. November is National Family Caregivers Month. That's a time to recognize and thank those people who care for family members, friends, and other loved ones. Caregiving, of course, can be really demanding and really stressful, so it's important for caregivers to take care of themselves as well. Here in Michigan, the Area Agency on Aging 1B provides a variety of support services for family caregivers. I spoke with the agency's coordinator of volunteer and caregiver services, Julie Lowenthal. So I think this is a really important topic right now. It's a really pressing topic in so many people's lives. And the way we think about caregiving and caregivers seems like it's changing quite a bit. I think we're understanding more about what caregiving is and how crucial it is. And we're really expanding the way we think about who is a caregiver and what support they need. It is National Caregivers Month. So tell us where you think we are and about the month that brings the focus to this issue.
That's a great question. So currently in the United States, there's actually 48 million unpaid family caregivers. And actually in Michigan, there's 1.7 million Michiganders who are family caregivers. 21% of all caregivers have reported that being a caregiver has actually impacted their own personal health and wellness. And there was actually a new statistic that just came out that $600 billion is how much caregivers are doing towards unpaid care in the United States yearly. And that's a massive number that most people are unaware of.
Yeah. I want to talk about specifically how we're defining those terms, because as I said, I think they're growing, they're expanding in a really important and healthy way. When you say caregiver, give me some examples of who you're thinking of there.
So family caregivers are anyone who is being unpaid. So they're not a professional caregiver, but they're being unpaid to provide care to their loved one. This can be someone who's doing it from a distance, so caring for a parent that's out of state and just, flying in a couple times a week or a couple times a month. It could be someone who's just handling financial things for their loved one, or it could be someone who's doing everyday hands-on care, like bathing and housing and, everything from transferring in and out of bed and in and out of wheelchairs, et cetera.
Yeah. And I think one way to think about this is we all, I think, at some point become caregivers. I can't think of anyone I know, in fact, who's not in one of those categories or situations at some point in their life. And I think it's probably safe to say that at some point we will all need caregiving. At some point in our lives, that really does get to the universality, I think, of this issue. It's not certain people or some places, it's all of us.
100%. And actually the baby boomer generation, which is one of our largest generations, is that generation that very shortly is going to need to be cared for. And that is something that us in the Aging Network are working very hard to make sure that there are resources available to that generation.
Yeah. So I want to talk about some of the things that you find yourselves doing at Area Agency on Aging, and you're now called Region 1B. Talk about what that means to support caregivers.
Of course. So quick thing, in Southeast Michigan, there are actually 3 area agencies on aging. My agency, 1B, serves all of basically a C around Wayne County. So we serve all of the counties but Wayne. And then in Wayne County, there are 2 agencies, the Senior Alliance and then DAAA, which is Detroit Area Agency on Aging. And then there are plenty of programs and services out there for caregivers. There's actually been a huge national push. Just last year, our federal government released, a bunch of funding things, as well as a catalog of how we can help family caregivers within our nation. At our agency, 1B, we have many wonderful programs and resources available to caregivers, and they can always find that information on our website. But I would like to highlight a few of those programs that are geared to caregivers. December 9th, we are offering a Caregiver Partners Passage Through Dementia workshop, and this will be a day-long workshop that helps caregivers gain knowledge, skills, information, and tools needed to take charge of their role as that caregiver, especially that caregiver caring for someone with dementia. We also offer a Powerful Tools for Caregiving course, which is a 6-week educational program designed to help caregivers take care of themselves while caring for a relative or a friend. And then most recently, we actually launched a caregiver respite voucher program, which will provide short-term respite care for informal family caregivers of older adults. And what we found is that access to respite care can help reduce caregiver stress, avoid caregiver burnout, and also lead to better outcomes. And underneath that specific initiative, caregivers are going to be able to receive up to $575 towards in-home respite care.
Yeah. What kinds of things do you feel we need to change from a legislative or policy perspective to make this all easier for folks? I mean, as you point out, there's this uncompensated care is something that many families are dealing with. The stress and the burdens of that are not small. What kinds of changes would you like to see that would ease some of that for those of us who are caregiving?
Well, for one, a caregiver tax credit, I think, would really help caregivers, especially those that don't qualify for state or federal funding. That will just help alleviate some of that personal financial burden. Also, workplace initiatives to allow caregivers to take that FMLA so that they are able to care for their loved one without the risk of losing their position at their work.
Yeah.
More 50% of caregivers do work full time. So having that workplace initiatives in place could really help those people.
I want to kind of end our discussion with a word and how you think that word should apply to this situation. A lot of times when we're talking about caregiving, we're talking about end of life or late in life care, and I think that the word dignity comes up a lot. How we think about that, how we define it, not just for the people who are receiving care, but also for the ones who are giving it. I want to give you just a little opportunity to talk about what dignity means in this context and how we make sure that dignity is something that defines this experience for people?
Great question. I think you almost got me stumped there for a second, but I think dignity actually can come in a lot of different ways. And I think every population, young, old, ethnicity defines dignity in a variety of different ways. But I also think dignity can be seen, especially for our aging population, is one, to not discount them. Even when they are maybe showing signs of Alzheimer's and dementia, they still are capable of making decisions based off of what they want. So making sure that their voices are being heard.
A local nonprofit is encouraging families to invest in their children's future on Black Friday instead of shopping at the mall. Fresh Perspective Seminars is hosting its 10th annual Black Friday Scholarship Bootcamp in Detroit on November 24th. High school juniors and seniors, along with their parents, can learn about college scholarships and how to navigate the world of financial aid. The event is the brainchild of the group's founder, Gwen Thomas, who is on a mission to help families eliminate college debt. Gwen Thomas, welcome to American Black Journal.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
Yeah. So tell me about Black Friday Scholarship Bootcamp. I love that name, the Scholarship Bootcamp. What happens on that day and why is it so important?
Well, we align ourselves with the theme of the traditional retail Black Friday. And so while America's out shopping, I'm working with Metro Detroit kids to help them shop for scholarships. And, our organization is a college and career readiness organization. And, the issue of college debt is something that has affected so many people across the country. And so it's our own way of having a solution to the college debt crises. We find that most students are intimidated by the scholarship writing process. So first of all, we try to work with students to have them understand it's just about them creating their narrative and talking about who they are as a student and how do they shape that essay to talk about the pursuit of their dreams and their hopes. And so we start with that premise first, to have them to, make sure they have a portfolio that includes some of the great things that they've been doing as a student, their whole learning process. And then on that day, we have a team of professionals who are coming out and talking to students about 21st century careers, because we want to make sure students are going into sustainable careers that make them employable.
Yeah. So one of the things I think is really true about the college application process, and I know a little about it because I now have 2 college-age children, and so the last 2 years we've had to go through this process in the fall. There is so much information out there. There are so many things you have to know. There are so many deadlines you have to meet. It really is almost like drinking from a fire hose to try to get all of it and understand it. I feel like that's half the battle, knowing what you're supposed to do, when you're supposed to do it, and how you're supposed to do it. You got to get there before you even think about where you're going to go to school or how you're going to pay for it.
You know what? And you're absolutely right, because, I started this process with my own son, some 15 years ago. And so I have sat in the shoes of many people who, are challenged with this process. And it's a lot different than it was when we were in college. And college has gotten so expensive. So we try to make sure that students, understand those processes from beginning to end, from admissions. And we actually try to start with our students as early as 8th grade. But for the most part, we know the reality is, families are busy with so many things. So for example, the boot camp, we invite 11th graders because a lot of them don't know that they can start applying for scholarships as early as the 11th grade. And so we want them to have enough time to plan. Planning is essential. I mean, it's so many things to manage, the admission process and determining, what school you're going to select and what really makes sense financially and academically. And we want to make sure students are matched with their right skill sets.
Yeah. The other thing that I kind of encountered in the last few years is that the number of aids, either scholarship or grants or other kind of funding for college that's available out there, I mean, there's so much more than most families would guess. And I think there's a little bit of intimidation sometimes that okay, I don't think my student, my child might qualify for this kind of aid or for this kind of scholarship, and so people don't lean into it. But when you really start looking, there is so much out there. There really is a lot of opportunity to help you pay for these really expensive educations.
Right. And that is a question that I hear from families all the time. And they make the assumption that the scholarships only apply for low income students. And that is not the case. I've got a student right now who came from a middle income family who ended up getting scholarships to pay for Wellesley, and she doesn't pay a dime. And so the misnomer, if you will, is that, that is the case, but, there are merit scholarships, there are leadership scholarships. I mean, literally there's about 25 to 30 different type of scholarships that students can qualify for, but it takes work. Students as it relates to them leaning in. I tell parents all the time, your student has to have some skin in the game. Otherwise, they're going to defer to mom and dad, and it's going to be a mommy ship or a daddy ship instead of a scholarship. And then the other thing, Steve, is that so many students will make the assumption that the scholarships are only for those students entering college as freshmen. Yeah. And that's not the case. The majority of the larger scholarships go for the upper class college students and grad students and PhD candidates. And so we've got to just make sure we continue to educate families. And that's why I created my book, The Parent Smart Guide to Sending Your Kids to College Without Going Broke. And we've done some of the work for our students, but it's from undergrad all the way to PhD, and it covers all those grad programs as well.
Yeah. I know you have speakers lined up to talk to students about the careers that they choose, and of course that has a lot to do with how much you want to spend on your education, where you want to go. Talk about how difficult those choices can sometimes be, and the counseling that kids need to try to figure out, is it worth paying $50,000 a year to go get a degree in something that's only going to pay you $35,000 a year?
And we do a lot of coaching with our students because sometimes they're not aware of, renewable energy jobs. They're not familiar with, the wind turbine business or those new 21st century careers where we desperately need young people to embrace, specifically in the STEM field. And so we make sure that we have representatives and professionals from those careers who can talk about their journey. And many times those students, it just takes them a matter of exposure and an understanding of those fields, because these companies are looking for students that are going to drive innovation. They're hungry for young minds. And so, we happily bring those professionals and share that information with students. This year we have, we're going to be talking to students about the Google UX design opportunities for them to get certifications. And we're going to also be talking about this big boom in Detroit with the Black film industry. So we have a couple of great professionals from Hollywood that are coming to be engaged in making sure students know about the behind the scenes film opportunities, as well as we have a guest, Jewel Tankard, who will talk about not only being an entrepreneur, but what do you do with those monies once you become very wealthy, I should say, and how to manage that money. And then the other thing is students are confused and families are confused with subsidized and up-subsidized loans. And, they have some challenges with, which colleges to select and, if they'll be able to afford it. Steve, this time of year, I get so many calls from families who have to come home, whose students have to come home because they've run out of funding. And so we are going to make sure we educate those students on how much monies are available in those programs should you have to, get a loan instead of getting scholarships.
Yeah. Okay, Gwen Thomas, it is always great to see you and talk with you about this. Congratulations on Black Friday Scholarship Bootcamp.
Thank you very much for having me.
We're going to leave you now with a performance by vocalist Alice McAllister Tillman and pianist Alvin Waddles from an episode of Detroit Performs Live from Marygrove. You can find out more about today's guests at AmericanBlackJournal.org, and you can connect with us anytime on social media. Take care, and we'll see you next time.
agree to be heaven. My dream heaven.
From Delta faucets to Behr paint, Masco Corporation is proud to deliver products that enhance the way consumers all over the world experience and enjoy their living spaces. Masco, serving Michigan communities since 1929. Support also provided by the Cynthia and Edsel Ford Fund for Journalism at Detroit Public TV.
The DTE Foundation proudly supports 50 years of American Black Journal in covering African American history, culture, and politics. The DTE Foundation and American Black Journal partners in presenting African American perspectives about our communities and in our world.
Also brought to you by Nissan Foundation and viewers like you. Thank you.